All righty. We're
Hello.
live.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Good. I'm
We, we,
just
we say that like we weren't just talking for the last 10 minutes off air.
it's all right. I'm getting there. I feel great.
Oh, good. You were starting to say something.
Oh, I'm just recovering from last week. That's all. Still me personally.
Yes. Well, we had a long time in St. Louis and then Thanksgiving, which I don't know how your Thanksgiving was. You probably had to go home and cook a whole big Thanksgiving dinner. I had to drive from Texas with my 7-year-old and two dogs, and our Thanksgiving dinner was Denny's restaurant next to La Quinta in Phoenix. Yum.
Yeah, no, we went to a friend's house, so I didn't do anything. I made a pie when I got back Wednesday and made a pie that evening. So
What kind
apple
of
pie
pie?
for everyone. Apple. Yeah.
Nice.
So
Cool. All right. Lately, of course, there's been a lot of discussion about news. And for the last year, there's been a huge discussion and angst about news. And it's something that I tend to kind of keep my foot out of, or my mouth shut, or whatever. I think partly because I feel like everybody has the right answer, and if you don't have the right answer, they look on you askance. But and I also feel like it's really hard to stay informed, generally speaking, just because I'm a working mom, I'm a stay-at-home mom, I'm homeschooling my kid, I've got this publishing company that I started this year, I'm writing, I teach, and I don't know when to find time to read the news, much less find a news source that I trust. I actually do have one that I'll mention, but I feel like with everyone having so much angst about news sources these days, and yet failing perhaps to examine their own choices in news. I thought I might ask you what you do these days to keep informed. You're also a stay-at-home dad, you're homeschooling, you're writing, you're pretty busy. What do you do to stay informed?
well, I wish I had some sort of like really intelligent thing to say about it and news source that I trust. I mean, most of the time, unfortunately, I get a lot of the headlines. I'll just read the headlines either from like a notification on my phone or CNN, and I know for sure a lot of those aren't necessarily the most accurate. Well, the accurate. It's hard to say. It's some of them that I get on my phone are for sure not accurate news sources, in the sense that they will tell a story and spin it and from a certain viewpoint, and so sometimes it's hard to know exactly what is real about the story in terms of how I should feel about it and what isn't. But I also look at news sources not so much not because I believe them, but I'm really interested in how people who get most of their news from Fox News, how they view the news. I'm really interested in that, not because I don't, I, I getting like on one side CNN and getting on the other side Fox News. It's really interesting to see how people live in completely different worlds and have different narratives for everything that's going on, and how strongly that narrative is portrayed and easily. I mean, you just look at the front lines of each side and you're like, oh, they have a narrative that they're saying about the world, and I don't agree at all. I think it's a really, and I think that they're doing it because it's a way of getting ratings. And
You're talking about both news sources, or one
to
in
some
particular?
extent, yeah. I mean, it's easier with Fox, I think. I mean, they
It's
make
easier to
out
what?
it's easier to tell that there's this narrative, that the world, the United States is under siege and under attack from liberals, and that it's falling apart, and that the majority, like there's this malevolent liberal group of people out there who are really trying to destroy the fundamental life of people, and so it's easy to tell. CNN, is not quite,
it's easy
that's
to
the
tell that
narrative.
that's the narrative.
Yeah, that's the narrative, and everything is from that, right? You look, they have all the bunch of stories that don't even get mentioned on, the New York Times or CNN, that always have to do with some woman's deviant sexual thing, a teacher or something, and the narrative always seems to be like, these people are not, they're just not fitting in with the Christian values that we have, that we should be having. Of course, they never say anything about the deviant behavior of conservative people, except beyond somebody is claiming that somebody else is being sexually deviant. It's never, oh my God, look at these conservatives and what they're doing. So there's definitely a narrative there. And on the other side, you kind of see that with CNN too, where they're like, look at all these, conservatives who are sexual deviants, and they're not living up to their norm, which is true. They're not living up to like what a Christian ideal would be. But they're pointing at it, and then they'll be like, and somebody has accused so and so about it too. So there's definitely a narrative. I wish I had the one news source that I really have been enjoying quite a bit, that I do read for 15 minutes or so a night, is The Economist, because they're got a European bent, and so that's always fun to see, because it makes you realize, oh, a lot of this stuff is just American hysteria on two political wings. So yeah, I enjoy that. I wish there was some news source. The more I go, we live in this world where truth there doesn't seem to be an absolute truth that it's defined by what political affiliation you're from, and I'm really getting to detest that.
There does not seem to be an absolute truth, or
right.
Truth is defined by your political affiliation.
Yeah, truth is defined by your political affiliation, or even that there really isn't. We can just throw up our hands and say there is no truth in a situation. It's just how you perceive it. And I'm beginning to detest that quite a bit, even though I am from a generation where that seems to be the prevailing philosophy. I'd like there to be truth and know it.
Well, I actually really like The Intercept, theintercept.com. I don't know if you've ever gone to it.
I have it.
They do have, I think, a strong liberal bent in one sense, but it's not liberal like Democrat or socialist, or it's what I like about The Intercept is that I feel like they do, there's no sacred cows, right?
Which is good. Yeah, and that's what I don't like about certain trusted news sources that are more on a liberal bent, because I'm like, God, you gotta, if you're gonna be this way with one political group, you gotta be that way with the other political group.
Exactly. So what I liked about The Intercept was that, so for example, in the lead up to the last presidential election, they analyzed Hillary. They did not, leave, there was not like gloves off, and they were criticized for it. Like, oh, how dare you go, analyze Hillary? And they're like, we're just being reporters and reporting what we're finding. And like during the Obama years, they were the ones that were pointing out the escalation of the drone wars and how many tens of thousands of bombs were being dropped on Middle Eastern countries as a result of the drone wars, and how many innocent people were killed as a result of them. And these were not things that were being reported anywhere. I mean, they weren't being reported by conservative outlets, and they weren't being reported by liberal outlets either. And so, I feel like there's a sense in which they seem to have a strong commitment to the truth. a strong commitment to, you know, seeing stories that aren't being reported, and they aren't being reported because there's a sacred cow that people are wanting to protect, right?
Right.
People were wanting to, you know, posit Obama as, you know, completely good and wonderful and making all these wonderful decisions when, you know, maybe in a lot of areas we can fully respect the things that he did, but let's look at the drone wars. Let's look at what under his leadership happened in the Middle East, and, you know, not deflect our eyes away from looking at that. And so I feel like I like what they do, but having said that, I just don't have a ton of time to even read everything that they are doing. And I know that I wouldn't want to have only the one source as my, because that's fallacious too, ultimately. Right. Even if I feel like they are reporting things that other news sources aren't touching. So
I think it's also, I do think it's good, definitely. That's great. I'm going to have to look at The Intercept, because I think it's totally important to have something that seems trustworthy and does not, you know, say, oh, I'm going to protect this because they're in our camp, right? You shouldn't, that's not truth. But I also think it's really good to look at a number of news sources, maybe not in too much of in depth, but to see what's their identity and what are they trying to, what is the identity that they're trying to give people, and why is that so appealing to them? Because then it gives us a better understanding of why we're at where we're at today, both politically and socially. Because if you can't understand where the other side is, or your side is, or why, or if you can't understand that push and pull in the narrative that's being spoken there, then you have no idea why it is, and you're just going to ignore it and be like, oh, they're stupid, which is not ever a good answer. Just saying the other side, they're just crazy or stupid is both illogical and also a good way to not ever change, or actually look at what's going on and try and do something about it. You're basically just saying they're just crazy. So
yeah, I think one of the things that fails to actually look at too is the reality that, so if all you do is dismiss the other side as crazy and illogical, and therefore not even worth analyzing or understanding, then you also then fail to analyze and understand yourself. You just consider your own understanding of the world as true, always true, forever true, and you fail to think about, well, actually, maybe I need to think about why I think these things, how I got here, and does that mean I need to tweak my understanding of the world a little bit, because maybe it isn't completely fundamentally true. So if you're unwilling to understand the other side, then you're actually unwilling to understand yourself either, because you're unwilling to change. You're static. You understand your position in this sort of static kind of way. And, you know, I think, you know, if we're more dynamic in how we understand things and willing for our understanding of the world and politics to be more fluid, then we're going to be able to maybe arrive closer to actual truth, whatever that is, than if we refuse to examine it.
I agree.
Well, and hello. Owen, you just make an appearance every single week, except for last week when you weren't around.
You hop on down. I think they're going to do one more thing. There we go. I don't think anybody could see him because I wasn't talking. So there we have it.
Right. Well, maybe for just a minute or a second. Yes. He's pretty cute, so I'm sure nobody minded seeing him.
Yeah, he went head first into the wall today and split open his chin, so I ran to the doctors because I wasn't sure if it had split open enough to need a stitch. Fortunately, he did not have a stitch, but then, yeah, then I had to come home and change my clothes because I had blood all over it.
Ah, the life of a stay-at-home dad.
So much fun. Yes.
So anyway, any last thoughts on that? I mean, I think that's something we could discuss for another hour, but
yeah, I think we could, especially it is. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I get really tired, honestly, of being in groups where people just sort of assume the 100% truth of their position and assume that everybody, has the exact same understanding as them too. And if, failing to actually investigate, okay, how we arrived at this place and, what it means and could we change? Maybe it's because I'm so disillusioned with Democrats and have been for years, that I find myself in groups where on so many other levels we have the same values and so many of the same, understandings of the world, but their go-to as far as the solution, I'm just like, yeah, that I don't see it. So then I'm willing to analyze all of those things and they're not, but or at least they appear not to be, because there's this assumption that we're all in agreement and we can, anyway.
I have a new T-shirt for us.
Okay.
It'll say "Nuance is truth."
Works for me. Works for me.
What do you mean nuance is truth? Oh God. All right.
Maybe we better end on that.
Yeah. We'll have a whole section, one of these things on our T-shirts too.
Yes, that sounds like a good plan. All righty. Well, maybe we'll sign off with that. Nuance is truth.
All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Right. Bye-bye.